As you near retirement, the biggest question you're going to face is, should you convert your RRSP to a RRIF, and when should you do that? What are the factors that you need to consider? Getting this question right can save you a ton of money in retirement and can significantly reduce the taxes you're going to pay. And in this video, we're going to cover the important factors for you to consider, the common strategies, the mistakes to avoid, and basically how and when to convert your registered retirement savings plan to your registered retirement income fund. Let's get into it. First off, what is the RRSP? The RRSP is the account that you contributed to every single year to set yourself up for retirement. So every year, late February, early March, you would put in a chunk of money into your RRSP, and that would grow compound tax-free. You got a tax credit for putting the funds in the RRSP, and it's kind of been put aside. Now that account has grown, it's gotten larger, and it's time to convert it, right? The RRIF is the Registered Retirement Income Fund, effectively your pension. Individuals who don't have pensions get an RRSP, and that RRSP will eventually get converted to a RRIF, which is your pension income stream. Now, let's start with the basics. So you must convert your RRSP to a RRIF by December 31st of the year in which you turn 71. And the withdrawals have to start the following year. So you convert it in the year you turn 71, the withdrawals have to start the following year, which means in theory you could wait till December 31st of the year you turn 72 before making your first withdrawal from your RRIF. And every year, there's a mandatory minimum withdrawal, and that is a percentage of the total balance as of December 31st of the prior year. That percentage increases with time. When you're 65, the minimum you must withdraw from your RRIF is 4%. When you're 72, it goes up to 5.4%. And by the time you're 95, you got to withdraw 20% of your RRIF every single year. The government's trying to set yourself up to draw down on that RRIF so that you basically eliminate it by the time you pass. The idea is you want to limit the tax burden that this account will have once you pass. Because once you pass, the entire amount that's left in your RRIF will be deemed as taxable to the holder. You're basically going to lose half of it to taxes. So the key with a RRIF is balancing the needs for income and the drawdown rate while trying to keep taxes low, and the eventuality of a complete taxable event on death. So you do get a spousal rollover. So if you happen to be married or if you happen to have a spouse, the first of you to pass will get a tax-free rollover to the other spouse. So the entire amount basically moves. If I pass and I have a RRIF, my entire RRIF passes over to my wife. And then she needs to worry about drawing down that account over time before she passes. And when she passes, then that entire amount becomes taxable to her. So you really want to make sure that you're drawing down on the RRIF so that you don't have a large RRIF when you pass away. This is called a drawdown strategy. You want to make sure you're drawing down effectively. A couple other things we should talk about with respect to the RRIF. Now, you can choose to use your spouse's age to lower the minimum withdrawal percentage or the minimum withdrawal amount by using your spouse's age. And remember that all the withdrawals, everything you draw down, whether it's an RRSP or a RRIF, is taxable income. This is your income. That's your pension income. You've benefited from having tax-free compound growth for all these years. Now it's taxable. The government wants to get paid their cut. So if you draw down 200 grand, well, you're going to add $200,000 to your taxable income in that year, and all of that will be taxable. So it increases your marginal tax rate. You might go from a 30% tax rate to a 40% tax rate by drawing down on your RRIF. You want to make sure you're planning. You want to make sure you're properly planning a drawdown strategy which makes sense based on, your risk tolerance, your life expectancy, your need for cash, and your tax situation. The worst thing that can happen is you don't draw down on this account, you let it grow, it compounds, it becomes a huge account, you pass away, and then boom, half of it disappears to taxes. So when is the best time to convert? So generally, if you stop working and you're going to be drawing down on your registered assets as part of your retirement income, that's probably a good time to start considering a conversion to a RRIF. If you're going to draw down more than the minimum, then you should convert to a RRIF. Why? First off, every deregistration from an RRSP typically is associated with a fee. So if you're pulling money out every month or so from an RRSP, you're going to get dinged the $50 or $100 fee every single time. With a RRIF, there are no withdrawal fees. There are no deregistration fees. with most financial institutions. So that's one big thing. Two, the withholding tax problem. So RRSPs, if you're drawing down from RRSPs, you do have minimum withholding tax, whether it's 10, 20, or 30%. The financial institution is mandated to take a chunk of that and remit it to the government in your place. So if you draw down large sums from your RRSP, you're not going to get the full amount. It gets sent over to the government as taxes. Now, you don't lose that money, but you lose the use of that money for a year while it's sent to the government to pay for future taxes. Now, if you do a RRIF, you don't have to worry about withholding tax if you're doing the minimum RRIF withdrawals. It just gives you a bit more control over your taxes, and it gives you the time value of the money. You have the money instead of the government for that entire year where you have to pay the tax. Finally, another thing to consider is the pension income benefit. So when you do convert from an RRSP to a RRIF, that counts as pension income. And Canadians are allowed to have $2,000 per year of tax-free pension income. Meaning, if you're 65 and you have no other pension income, you could draw down from your RRIF, convert your RRSP to a RRIF, draw down and get $2,000 of tax-free income. You could do that every year until you're 71, 6 years of tax-free income, $2,000 per year. If both you and your spouse are doing that, it adds up, right? $24,000 of tax-free income, it's significant. So when should you be converting that account then? All right, if you need the income, clearly you're converting from an RRSP to RRIF. If you're in a situation where you're going to draw down on those funds every single month, you're going to convert. If you need tax-free pension income, you could do it as well. And also, if you're worried about withholding tax flexibility, you can do it as well. Other than that, the rule of thumb with respect to an RRSP conversion to a RRIF is that assuming your RRSP isn't massively large, you typically want to defer the drawdown if you don't need the income. If you're not using that income on a monthly basis to live and to pay the bills and to keep the hydro on, then you're better off to defer because you get tax-free compound growth inside the registered account. Now, obviously, you're kicking the can down the line and you're saying, I'm going to deal with that tax bill later. Some key deferral years early on could be beneficial for your financial plan. At some point, you're going to need to do an aggressive drawdown strategy on that registered account. Now, if you're top tax bracket, no matter what, then there's no real benefit in drawing down today because every dollar you're drawing down today is going to get taxed. If you don't have a need for that income and you're top tax bracket, there's no benefit in drawing down more than the minimum annually. You'd rather defer it and then pay the tax bill at the end because you're going to get that tax-free compound growth for all of those years while you're deferring. So if you do have income needs, convert, draw down, use the pension income credit. If you don't, generally defer. If you have a large RRSP and a lower tax rate today, then you should do some form of tax arbitrage and draw down on that RRSP before you pass away. I do want to touch on a few other factors to consider if you're debating converting from an RRSP to a RRIF. One is to take advantage of low income years. If you happen to have a year where you have significantly low tax income surrounded by years of high income, that might be a really good year to deregister a chunk of assets or to convert your RRSP to a RRIF and to do a drawdown on those RRIFs. Why would you do this? You would use your lower tax bracket to maximize your withdrawals. Remember, those withdrawals are going to be classified as income, so it's taxable. So if you have a lower taxable year, you're going to pay less to the government. We want to pay the least amount of taxes to the government. We've talked about the pension income tax credit, so that's one thing you should factor and consider. Managing large RRSP balances. This is a big one. In a proper planning situation, you should have a meltdown strategy for your RRSP, which coincides with your spouse's situation and your household's asset level. This needs to be done as part of a larger plan. You can't just say, I have $1 million RRSP. How am I going to do this? No, it needs to factor in all of your other cash flows and your spouse's cash flows for the foreseeable future. Because this plan needs to take into account every dollar that's going to come into the household and be taxed for the next, not just 2 years or 3 years, but for the next 20, 30, 40 years, all the way till your death. And that's one thing I can't stress enough. You can't just look at this picture in a void. It needs to form part of a bigger plan. The plan is your retirement, your wealth and estate plan. And that's one thing I beat the table on and I pound the drum. You need to have a retirement plan. You need to have a wealth and estate plan that's done for you, that takes into account all of these details, your investments, your risk tolerance, your liquidity needs, and what's going to happen to your cash flow for the next 10, 20, 30 years. The bottom line is that there is no universal answer for everyone. Everyone is different, and everyone should have a plan that spits out the answer for you. And that's what we'd love to do for you. Go to speaktorob.com to book your no obligation consultation. So remember, converting your RRSP to a RRIF isn't a simple one-off decision. It should form part of a larger plan. It's a strategy. You need to factor your income, your taxes, your estate planning, your liquidity needs, all of that. And I wish you the best of luck with that decision. And I will see you guys in the next video.